Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Pro Wrestling Post Podcast. On this week's show,
In WWE news, Retribution has its true leader in mind, in body, and in soul, and his name is Mustafa Ali. That, and we also discuss the upcoming WWE Draft. Who goes where?
In AEW news, Cody reclaims the TNT Championship, and the number one contenders tournament for the AEW World Championship is on the way.
all that and more. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Pro Wrestling Post Podcast. How are we all? This is Mark Blake. I am your host. And as always, I'm with my buddies from across the pond. I have Mr. Pete and I have Mr. Mark. How are we, guys?
It's been a pretty good week, despite it being hectic. There's so much going on.
Yeah, we've got our in our neck of the woods. It's going to be a Thanksgiving or holiday weekend, so we're going to give thanks, stuff our faces, maybe watch any sports that are available. It's crazy how all sports are all intertwined around the same time. Weird.
I'm glad you brought up sports because as we're recording this on Thursday evening / afternoon for you guys, I'm watching. Well, not watching. I have the soccer / football in the background because England, my country, my team are playing against Wales. So that's on in the background. If I suddenly start screaming, much like I said last week with Spurs, it's because of that. So I apologise from the off. So let's just jump straight into things. In the open there, Mark spoke about a very big week in WWE that's going to change possibly the course of the company, along with something else, another storyline that could change the course of the company. Mark, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. So we started off with Retribution, which for listeners of the show have been wondering that we feel that it's dying its death. There's not been the continuity. Somebody gets sick. We can't follow it. Why would we care? Blah, blah. And then they flipped the switch. Not only did they make us see things differently, we never saw it coming in the slightest. Mustafa Ali as the leader of Retribution. Wow. Thoughts on that initially on everyone's part? When we looked at the lead in earlier on in the show, Ali continued to say, "I want you one-on-one," as he's saying this to MVP and his cronies or the rest of the Hurt Business. And at that point, we're thinking, wow, he's going to want to settle the score, show a mano-a-mano, everything that has been reflective of the Mustafa character, only to know, no, it was just all a big setup. Pete, what do you think?
The way Retribution positioned themselves when they gave us their goals, their manifesto, I got the feeling that this was going to be different from every other invading faction in that they weren't necessarily going to have one leader, that one guy that they would rally around, because then it's too easy for the whole house of cards to fall down. I thought they were going to try to do things more democratically. Like there's no one leader of Retribution, it's just the five of them making decisions together. Kind of like the Shield did, really, because there wasn't one who led the Shield. I mean, Dean held the microphone and did lots of the talking, but he wasn't like clearly the leader. And for it to be Mustafa Ali seems like a swerve just for the sake of a swerve.
Yeah.
Like you have Retribution as this anti-authority group with shades of Antifa and kind of speaking to that segment of the populace that feels like they're not getting what they deserve, and also speaking to the segment of society that believes the other half are terrifying. And to put Mustafa Ali, a former police officer, as the head of this, I don't want to say anarchist, but I don't really know how else to put it. To have him as the head of the lead figure of this anarchist group seems to be at odds not only with what Retribution is setting out to do, but also with who Ali is as a person.
They're very much blurring the lines of reality there, because it's gone on record how much of a good dude Mustafa Ali is. As you said, there he's an ex police officer. He's done things for fans. When he was going through the light up mask phase, I remember him giving away a few of his masks to some kids that were, I think they were life limited, and he was just so nice. And then, like you said, to flip the switch, and now he's the leader of this heel stable, and it was all him all along.
So
was it really, as you said, a swerve for swerve's sake?
So was he always the hacker? Was he the one sitting behind the gun?
That's what they're going to tie it to, aren't they? They're going to, the WWE, Uncle Vince and the rest of them are going to say, this was the plan all along. We told you to stay with it and, follow the course. But even though when Retribution turned up, people were saying, "Oh, this is Ali. This is his job. This is his work," and nothing was said. There was no direction. There wasn't even the slightest hint even of Mustafa Ali being involved in Retribution right at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, they've pulled the rug from underneath us and they said, see, this was it all along. Was it really? I mean, come on. I'm not that much of a mug. Although I have ex-girlfriends who tell me otherwise, but never mind. But what about you two? Are you down with that?
It reminds me of one of the great video game frauds in the history of the medium. Mark, maybe you'll remember this. There was a game called Hair Raiser.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a follow-on to that, like, Search for the Golden Hair. That I can't remember what the book was called. Masquerade? Anyway, so Hair Raiser was this game that supposedly had clues to the location of this very valuable piece of art, and if you were able to solve it, you could go and find this priceless, quote-unquote, priceless treasure. Eventually, they came to the conclusion that the clues in the video game were pointless. They made up something that they could then pull out and say, "Oh, this was the answer the whole time. No one was clever enough to figure it out. Guess we get to keep all the money that these people spent on this game and the prize that we'd been offering for whoever finds the solution, and we get to walk away with a bunch of money." And so it just seems like Mustafa Ali was just this thing they had in their back pocket that they could pull out and say, "Here, we planned this. This was the idea the whole time. We're doing long-term booking. Why are you booing us?"
Yeah, it as you said, it feels like he was the ace they had up their sleeve, just in case us fans and advertisers and network execs didn't quite see what WWE were doing. That's what it smells like to me. To the average fan, I mean, the fans that they're catering for, it's like, oh my God, what a shock. This is turned their heads upside down, because Ali was your typical white meat babyface. But to everyone else, it's like, oh, really? Come on.
I know you're probably neither. I'm getting a sense from both of you, not really fans of it. I think if they're trying to push something different, and the idea is trying to have a leader that you would less likely have expected to be in that role, is it change just for the sake of change? Probably. But maybe it's the optimism in me, or the optimistic fan that just hopes that in giving this, we ask for new roles and different people in different positions. Why can't we have that for someone like Ali, who was a prominent cruiserweight and successful in that? But to think of where his character was as part of 205 Live, and when he first came in, to now a couple years later, to being shuffled around on and off on SmackDown, to potentially being here and actually seemingly having direction, I kind of like it. I kind of like it, actually, because I see where he was to where he is, and that's maybe and the same could be said about Cedric Alexander being used a little more prominently. It always freshens things up.
If there's anything good to come out of this, it would be to elevate Mustafa Ali and the rest of Retribution to at least upper mid card. That's the positives. The negatives is what you've just said. We've seen this story before. we wanted something different, and they gave us the, hey, we're an anarchist group, but we've got someone on the inside, and that person is, it's Mustafa Ali. It's done. We know we go on about what's old is new, but sometimes when it's been overplayed so many times, aces and eights back in TNA, exactly the same storyline, and they had the someone on the inside, and it was, oh look, it was Bully Ray all along, and I just want something different, or don't use the sodding storyline for 10, 15 years and then bring it back, a la, Rey Mysterio and Dominic again. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. What about you, Pete?
And you say that this has the potential to elevate not only Retribution but Mustafa Ali. I got to counter with the fact that all of that can just as easily be wiped away. Because we've seen that happen with Wade Barrett and everyone else in the Nexus, practically. Like, really, I think the only one to come out of the Nexus and really stick around is Daniel Bryan. And that was only because everybody got behind him. So either this is a case of everybody gets behind Mustafa Ali and Retribution and they become kind of like a staple of the roster for years to come, or they just kind of flounder at Survivor Series or whenever this storyline is bound to wrap up, and we see them float around the mid card like everyone else.
It's looking like Hurt Business against Retribution at Survivor Series, personally. But again,
so who do you add? Who do you add to Hurt Business? Are they they're a squad of 4 now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4 of them now.
Yeah, there's 4 of them.
So they could. Yeah, they could. What, Apollo Crews could come across, Ricochet. I mean, the my enemy. No, was it
for the greater good? Yeah.
Yeah.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah.
So that could work, but again, unless Retribution goes over in dominant fashion, but then in the same, as Pete's just put, in the same way, you're hurting Hurt Business, who were on the up through Raw Underground and the turn of Cedric. They were being featured quite prominently. So you're gonna damage someone or one group along the way.
Yeah, really. I can't see a situation where nobody walks away with less.
So let's go back to where we were in episode 1. I asked you both a question. How do we feel about Retribution? Now, again, I'm going to say the same question again, but knowing what we know now, how do we feel about Retribution? Are we cautiously optimistic, or are we just like, passe?
I think that they had several opportunities to really get me invested, and they really only knocked it out of the park on one occasion, and that was when Retribution laid out their aims. And then they followed that up with terrible masks, horrible nicknames, and now they followed that up with a disappointing reveal as the leader. I probably said something along the lines of I didn't have much hope for it. And here I am months later, feeling very much the same way.
Right. Mark, I know you're Mr. Optimistic, but how are you? Come on.
And I see everything that Pete's saying. The masks are awful. The names are terrible. The concept has potential, but then the execution and things just haven't come through. But this is where I guess we kind of get divided, and I'm excited about what the potential of having Mustafa Ali in a leadership role to leading this faction means. That said, there is also the fear in how the perception of having someone that is a specific culture reflected in a role where terrorism or hijacking, and those words I use very loosely because unfortunately these are the words that commentators use, describing something and then not thinking that people are smart enough that you put somebody that's not unfortunately, but is that culture, that religion, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, where the stigma will be reattached to that, unfortunately. That's the problem. That's the concern I have with having him, not because I have any concern with him as a performer, as an athlete, or even his culture. And I don't even want to go down the left lane because I'm afraid of oncoming traffic. I'm afraid of what this talented athlete performer might face the retribution of people's attacks are unjustly.
Yeah,
If that sounds fair.
Before we came on air, folks, we discussed this. Mark dropped this bombshell on us. Well, it's not really a bombshell. It was to me because I hadn't actually thought about that point of view at all. All I saw was Lee as the leader of Retribution. I didn't even see the connotations it could throw at us. I'm slightly nervous that you could be right. That there's going to be a percentage, hopefully if there is a percentage, it's going to be bloody small. But there's going to be a small percentage of say, see, he's Muslim, he's this, he's that, he's everything that's wrong with the world, blah, 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 blah. I really hope that don't happen. I really sincerely hope.
Could this run the risk of being a Muhammad Hassan scenario?
No, I don't think.
Because they used lynching and they used all of that, and they were wearing black masks, and it wasn't such a wrong thing to do to that poor kid. You know,
if I remember rightly, that wasn't long after 9/11.
Yeah. Could it be?
Oh no, that was even closer to the 7/7 bombing in London.
In London, wasn't there?
Oh, that's right, 7/7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he got canned for that and sent on his way for no fault of his own. But I don't think that kind of vitriol is going to be headed towards Ali this time. I reckon it's going to be more of the online hate. You know what? The whole society has changed now. Once you get online, you're anonymous. You can say whatever you want and throw whatever shade and crap at people as much as you want because you're not going to get any back. That's what I think he's going to get. At the moment, there's no fans going in, so I don't think he's going to get any heat, so to speak, from in an arena. But I'm hoping that I like to see the best in people, and I'm hoping that people can see this is a bloody storyline. This is nothing to do with real life. That this is just a piece of entertainment, and he is a goddamn character playing a sodding role. That's all I'm hoping for. So, Mark, you didn't actually answer the question. Are you are quietly hopeful then?
Yeah, I'm quietly hopeful. I mean, but then in saying that, this could all blow up and things change starting, I guess, as we're recording this tomorrow night.
Oh, look at you with a segue.
Yeah.
It was Pete last week. It's you this week. Wow.
Boom! Shakalaka.
Good sense.
Boom goes the dynamite.
As Mark has so eloquently put there, it's WWE Draft time. When was the last draft? Was it about a year ago?
The shake-ups don't count.
Yeah, they didn't call
the
it
shake-ups.
It was a shake-up.
Yeah. So this was announced a few weeks ago that a draft was going to happen, and it's going to be split over 2 nights. So SmackDown's night is tomorrow night, as of recording, and then Raw is on Monday. And an hour ago, the lovely Ryan Satin, in his new role at Fox Sports, posted the draft pool and rules. Now, there's a ton of people in each pool that we're not going to go over because we'll spend half the pod talking about it. But the rules are, let me run through the rules. There says more than 60 male superstars, female superstars, and tag teams. Since SmackDown is a 2-hour show and Raw is a 3-hour show, for every 2 picks SmackDown has, Raw will get 3. Tag teams will still count as 1 pick unless Fox or USA, in conjunction with WWE officials, want to pick 1 superstar from the team, i.e. split the team. You can see that happening with quite a few people. And any undrafted superstars will immediately be declared free agents and be able to sign with the brand of their choosing. That is it. So, let's just circle back a bit. Retribution. Are they going to split them up?
Not in the middle of this storyline.
No.
Can I throw something at you that popped into my head as Mark was talking then? Could we see Retribution split onto both sides and be like a virus and take over both brands?
That requires long-term booking.
Damn it, Vince! That does indeed. Yeah, I didn't think that through. Damn it.
Well, I mean, I think the potential in doing that makes sense because then the virus is infected everywhere, right? If it includes NXT, do they split 3 ways?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, NXT wasn't mentioned. It's just saying a SmackDown and Raw draft.
They named Arturo Ruas from NXT as available in the draft pool, but he's only available to Raw. Or no, he's
Is that because of Raw Underground?
He's able to be drafted on Monday night because they split.
Yeah. So him along with like Dabba Kato, you've got Eric of the Viking Raiders, so they're obviously splitting up because obviously one of them's injured.
Yeah.
Who else is there I can see? So Retribution, all of them will be picked on Monday. I can't really see any NXT talent, which was
literally just Arturo Ruas.
Yeah, it really is. That's strange. Maybe Triple H has put his foot down and said, "You're not having my boys and girls." Wonders have never ceased. So my storyline is obviously too highbrow and too advanced for Vince and everyone else to pick up. Who do we see going where? We've got the champions. Are they staying on the brands? Are they swapping? What can we see?
Reigns is probably going to stay on SmackDown because he's Universal Champion and SmackDown is on terrestrial TV, network television. And I imagine that having the face of the company being the most accessible makes the most sense.
What about you, Mark?
Well, I can't see the women's championships changing hands because they're designated by the brand, right? So, but the men's, I always associated the WWE title with Raw. I don't know why that is. I'm not sure if it's because it's the featured show, and in comparison, Universal tends to take a kind of back seat, but a seat to the left or a seat to the right. It's not
unless you're Michael Cole, because at the last pay-per-view at Night of Champions, during the intro, he actually said that Roman Reigns has the championship that is the most important championship in all of wrestling. Paraphrasing there, but that's what he said. And I sat here and I laughed my socks off thinking, what a bunch of crap. Sorry, just butt in there.
So apparently there is something in the water that Michael Cole is drinking that dictates, maybe something in his ear or someone feeding them that. So now if Reigns does go, I don't want the storyline with Uso to end, and it may not, but maybe Jey Uso also moves over.
See, that's the thing that they've done in the past. It kind of grinds my gears the wrong way, because I feel like sometimes the storyline has played out, and to bring it over to the new brand seems like
why have the split?
And the best
why
part
make
about
this draft?
The best idea about splitting them is that we can kind of have them away from each other for a while and kind of get to a point where that matchup feels fresh again.
So are they doing the draft, do you think, maybe too early? Should this have been closer to Survivor Series as opposed to...
Maybe too late even, because I feel like having a brand that is solidified and unified going into Survivor Series is better for the show, especially if they're going to keep doing this brand warfare shtick, than having the draft and then letting everyone kind of figure out where they fit in the new show as the big lead up.
So like possibly it should have happened the night after Night of Champions, because Night of Champions could have been the last night. All the championships were available that night. They've had their feuds, their matches. The next night the draft starts, and it's like a reset button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to do it then, as you said, rather than right before Survivor Series, where brand supremacy reigns supreme. But if you've got new members on each brand and they're trying to forge a relationship or alliances or whatever else, it's going to look strange at least.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very rushed.
WWE booking rushed? What are you drinking, mate? That's wrong. Get out. Have we got any? Where would you like people to be? So Mark seems to think that WWE Championship's staying on Raw. Do we want people from? Go on.
The United States and Intercontinental Championship usually switch brands on draft night.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I would like nothing else than for Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to clash over the Interchampionship.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yes.
yes.
It's been how long? It's been at least 2 years since they've
2
wrestled.
years, maybe 3.
Yeah, and I love both guys back from their PWG and Ring of Honor days.
That's a rivalries piece if I ever saw one.
So,
Dibs. Okay, you heard that here. Pete is covering that for us.
That's if it happens. That's if it happens. We
That doesn't have to happen. It's not a never big
Yeah,
cross.
even then, that's yeah. There's history there.
There we go.
Yeah, out of everything that's happening over this draft, like weekend, so to speak, that's the one thing that I desperately want. I cannot wait. Them two, and the roles reversed now. So obviously, like Sammy's the heel and Kevin Owens is the babyface.
Yeah, which is a great. That's just a great way to breathe new life into this feud.
Exactly, adds a new wrinkle to the story. It's good. If that's one thing. What about you, Mark? Have you got anything anyone that you'd like to see from either brand?
It's a good question. I'd like to see Naomi utilized. So, I mean, from the women's side, I'd like her to move over to Raw and to be able to contend because it really doesn't seem like it's happening or she's being utilized. I'm not sure if she's injured or if it's just a matter of use. But that's something.
Well, she came back with a big fanfare and then that kind of died off.
Well, that was with Lacey Evans, and then I really didn't see very much of anything after that. So
I think the whole women's division is just basically around Bayley and Sasha at the moment.
Yeah. I'd like to see Styles back on Raw. I think having a series, a Drew McIntyre contending for the title series.
Yeah.
Yes, that seems interesting. I think Strowman should maybe go to Raw too.
Yeah, I could see going back over.
Could they kind of tap into that? I mean, I know probably shouldn't be bringing up Dabba-Kato, but do they try to bridge Raw Underground unless that's like not a concept and yet it's maybe a rivalry there tries to try to do something if he is there? Yeah.
Potentially. I mean that's a lot more than I had for Dabba-Kato, which was Dabba-Kato to Raw with Shane McMahon as his manager.
Yeah, there was rumors that Shane's got a more prominent role backstage. I think Raw Underground was his idea, but with Raw Underground being kiboshed because of COVID and everything else, having him as a manager, that makes sense. I haven't seen Shane as a manager since. Well, he wasn't even really a manager. He used to accompany his old man to the ring back in the Attitude Era. But but yeah, that'd be again. That's a new wrinkle to his bow, or a new string to his bow, and a wrinkle to the story. Yeah, that'd be great. Any tag teams you want to see split? I can name one, just because I can't stand them, which is Miz and John Morrison. I couldn't stand them the first time round. I detest them even more now.
Is that a fault with them, or is that them doing their heel shtick too effectively?
No, it's them.
Right.
I can understand I can understand the.
I'm confident now he says it.
I can understand the heel shtick that they do. Totally understand it. I just don't like them together as a pairing. I thought Miz completely branched away from John Morrison back in the day and grew and grew and grew, whereas John Morrison kind of plateaued and stayed where he was, no matter where he was. So John Morrison drags Miz down. There we go. That's my take.
Going on record there.
I don't want to see any tag teams get split up just because the tag division is so thin already.
Well, Vince has got to save money, and that's why he splits tag teams up, because he doesn't want to pay people twice. Seriously, that's why he does it. He doesn't want to pay people twice, double money. So that's why he splits tag teams up, and that's why the division is crap again. And AEW's is thriving. So there we go.
NXT's is thriving. So.
NXT. It's told you, once you get up onto the main roster, you need to be not in a tag team unless you're the Street Profits. They've done bloody well, to be fair. That's the draft done. If you this is obviously being recorded on the Thursday, so the day before. You'll be listening to this on the Sunday. Let us know if we were right, if we were wrong, if who you'd like to see on Monday night, because that's happening tomorrow as you're listening to it, if that makes sense. We're going to switch gears just a tad bit there, and we are going to go and talk about some past pieces that have been published on the site recently. Mark, what have you got for us today? You've got a couple of great pieces, haven't you?
Well, we have some wonderful pieces actually this past week. And Mike Bryan, who is really branching out and really, I think, embracing our Unsung Heroes series of pieces. That was one of them this past week, where he had an opportunity to reflect on the life and times of Brian Pillman. From Pillman's days in WCW to ECW to the WWE, or at the time was WWF, and really everything he had contributed then. Pretty awesome stuff. If you get a chance, anyone here's thoughts when it comes to Brian Pillman?
It's had such a strong mind for the business. Really, the only downside that I could see with Brian Pillman is that there wasn't a lot he did that came across as flashy.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of like Austin Theory in that way. He doesn't do anything extraordinarily well, but everything he does looks really good.
Right.
Brian Pillman was light years ahead of his time.
Yeah,
in terms of character development. The loose cannon gimmick that he had. I'd listened to the 83 Weeks podcast with Eric Bischoff, and I'm not too sure how much of this is real and hyperbole or not. But Eric Bischoff has said on record that he couldn't give Brian Pillman the money that he wanted. So go make your name elsewhere. And we'll when your name is in gold lights, we'll bring you back. And that's how this whole thing started. But then Brian used to phone Eric every 1 or 2 weeks, give him an update, and ask when's he coming back. And that's how the rumour of him being a mole for Eric Bischoff began. Brian found out about it, and he played up to it. He incorporated it into his loose cannon gimmick, and it was unheard of at the time. Another guy that was blurring the lines between reality and fiction. Then you got the home invasion storyline. Again, being edgy way before edgy was even on TV. It was so damn good. And that's not even his bloody wrestling ability. It's part of the Hollywood Blondes with Austin, or Williams at the time, to his matches with Liger. It's just a man who's I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did in the industry.
Agreed. Tag team work, singles work, a lot of early 90s stuff that would probably fly under the radar of some. But then, when he had the motorcycle accident, everything as a performer slows down. You can't jump as high. You don't have the mobility that you did, so you have to adjust your style. And unfortunately, later generations they ended up seeing this edgy character, but the quality of the performer was affected. It was hampered a great deal. So being a part of something like the Hart Foundation, where he could still be that performer, but he's still part of a close-knit a family and part of something that he did have genuine ties to, is great. And his son has carried that on, right?
Yeah, he's doing great guns in MLW.
Mm-hmm.
He's been featured on AEW. I want to see more of him. I can't not look at him and see his dad. It's just spitting image, really is.
Mm-hmm.
But they're two totally different in-ring performers, which is fantastic. So your second piece.
So it's interesting because in some ways they're both interconnected. So the piece that was about Brian Pillman was this past Monday, as we're recording this, October the 5th, which was the 23rd anniversary of his passing, which was also the same night as our next piece, which is an On This Day, which is of the Bad Blood in your house pay-per-view, the Hell in a Cell match, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, which was the debut of the Big Red Machine, Kane.
That's gotta be Kane.
That's
Sorry,
gotta be Kane. Everybody
help
can say
myself.
it. Say it proudly. Alice Podgorski once again reflects back with this and the whole build-up to the feud between Shawn and Taker, and then the debut of Kane and the story that was tied to it. And I read one comment because we had an opportunity to share it to some various Facebook groups, and they're saying, this was one of those matches where, man, I can't just, when can this, what's going to happen with this main event? Is it just kind of drag on? Are we ever going to know what happens? And then bam, right at the end is when Kane's debut came. Everybody knew who he was. Nobody needed to introduce who he was. His arrival it was building. And that was when that storyline was kind of hitting that crescendo. And we saw a bloodied and battered Shawn Michaels in that match too, and beaten, and he ultimately wins it because of Kane's debut. But at the same time, it was great. And a lot of people still consider it maybe the best Hell in a Cell match ever, despite I want to say theatrics, but the death-defying leaps and falls that Mick Foley suffered during his with The Undertaker. Is it the best Hell in a Cell match? Arguably, some will say yes.
Certainly the one that set the tone for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mick Foley's gone on record to say that when his match against Taker took place and he was talking to Taker about how they should have their match, apparently Taker was saying, well, we'll try and do some of the stuff that I did with Shawn. And Mick was like, yeah, but I'm not Shawn. I can't do that. and that's how they came up with the starting on top of the cage and being thrown off. And after that, I mean, that's always going to be the most remembered Hell in a Cell, possibly one of the most remembered matches of all time, if you can call it a match.
Yeah.
But the Shawn and Taker match at the time was absolutely mind-blowing. I think I watched this a few weeks later. I got hold of a tape over here. A friend of mine had recorded it off Sky Box Office, it was, or Sky Movies, one of the two. And right. I borrowed the VCR and watched it. I was just amazed, absolutely amazed. The stuff that Shawn was doing, that Taker was putting him through. And then, as you said, the storyline convergence at the end. It was the end of that storyline, and then it branched off into a new storyline. Again, we say we bang this drum every week, but long-term booking, it happened then. From that story, from the end of that story, we had Kane and Taker, and that lasted how many months? Because Taker refused to even fight against his brother. It's a very memorable and well-deserved to be remembered match.
No doubt.
So from some past pieces, we'll have some future pieces, or a future piece, I should say, in a few minutes or so. But before we get there, we are going to talk about AEW and what happened last night on Dynamite. Quite a few things happened on the show, Pete. Do you want to run through them?
There was a lot that happened on AEW last night. We had TF2 versus FTR for the 20-minute Brush with Greatness, followed by Best Friends coming out to challenge for the World Tag Team Championships next week on Dynamite for their first anniversary show. We also had the tag team match everybody was waiting for in the main event, Chris Jericho and Jake Hager versus Dr. Luther and Serpentico. Chaos Project, I believe, is their team name.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yep.
And more interestingly, the championship that changed hands last night was the TNT Championship. Cody defeated Brody Lee in the dog collar match. It was quite the bloody match if you've seen it.
I haven't had the chance to watch it yet. I will be watching it this weekend. Obviously, I know what happens. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I like a couple of throwbacks to the past here. There was obviously the dog collar match, which was a throwback back to Dusty's era, and a certain someone sitting out in the crowd, all by his lonesome, but someone that's interconnected with dog collar matches.
Yes, the one of the participants from that classic dog collar match between Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine, of course, the living half of that match, was in the crowd for this match between Cody and Brody Lee.
Wow.
Seeing it all go down, and yeah, they reached the requisite level of bloodshed for a dog collar match, especially considering the that match they had in Georgia Championship Wrestling. Excited to see Cody with the belt again. Didn't expect it to be this soon. Like I thought Brody Lee was gonna blow through people with the help of the Dark Order, and then Cody was gonna come back the what's the word? Vanquishing hero after Full Gear.
Oh, we spoke about this after Brody decimated Cody, and we pretty much all said the same thing, that that's what we expected.
Mm-hmm.
And for the title switch, it's a bit, as you said, a bit strange. Where does this leave Brody? Is it the end of the feud? Does Brody look forward and take on Moxley or Archer or whoever's got the title come Full Gear? It's very strange. So we just spoke about long-term booking, how the end of that Hell in a Cell match set forward the Kane and Taker match. Is there anything to take out of this match? I mean, I know it's obviously I haven't seen the match, but I've read the results, and apparently at the end of Cody's little victory celebration, Orange Cassidy came out and threw his hat in the ring.
Yes, it looked almost like Cody was going to bring back the open challenge.
Oh my god!
I don't think he's gonna do that, but I think he's still just trying to remind everyone that he is the fighting champion in a way that Brody Lee was not. And so, Orange Cassidy, who just recently had a championship match last week, he had a match against Brody Lee, came up short thanks to Dark Order interference, and yeah, he came out to almost as if to answer Cody's challenge, and to challenge Cody actually to the match next week. Cody accepted, so that is on the card, and my mom could not be more distraught if I asked her to save one of her kids. Because she absolutely loves Orange Cassidy, but she's come to really like Cody.
She is going to be super torn next week then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Is Orange Cassidy akin to, is him contending for the TNT championship or in that conversation the same way maybe Darby Allin is with Jon Moxley in the AEW? Like, do they have one character that just shines differently, sparkles differently, and that others warm themselves to, whereas Orange Cassidy is part of that TNT title picture in essence, whereas Darby Allin, I'm not saying he's a hanger-arounder, but you've got him or Will Hobbs, or they're all being worked together as part of, with Jon Moxley. It's almost like they're taking certain characters and you're part of this grouping and you're part of this grouping, or is that just maybe my
that's a good shout. That's a good shout.
Yeah,
because
it's definitely an interesting way to look at the way they're going about booking.
I mean, you've said there about Will Hobbs and Darby Allin, kind of, they're using Jon Moxley's spotlight to highlight them and maybe push them up the card a bit. And with Orange has sort of flirted with the top of the cards with Jericho, and now they're gonna try and use Cody to elevate him a bit more.
Yeah, at the very least, they have a big push in mind for Orange Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got people like Mick Foley coming out and saying that Orange Cassidy is one of the best things on AEW, you've got to try and strike while the iron's hot, and they're doing a bloody good job, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But that character needed to evolve a little bit. There's only so much of the nonchalant I don't care, whereas there has to be a fire lit under them. He might have those comical moments, but I think where long term, where the hate came for Orange Cassidy was you either like the comedy or you don't. And the comedy is great, but is the comedy going to be what sustains your character long term for you to want to take you seriously, for you to be the champion? Like, I could honestly see him carrying a title and just kind of like dragging it behind him, kind of thing. Like he's almost NATO-esque, right?
Mhm.
Where the nonchalant. I mean, that could work where he weaves the two, but there has to be a switch that went off, and Jericho brought that switch out in Cassidy.
Yeah, certainly did. He brought the bubbling tension and desire of not being wronged once more to the surface. Did you guys ever watch Shikara? I don't even know if we're going to talk about this or leave this in the pod because of what Shikara's turned into. But Orange Cassidy, I think was he Fire Ant?
Yep. Yeah, he was Fire Ant.
So he has learnt for so long how to react and give emotion without using facials. That's why Orange Cassidy works so well, because he spent so many years as Fire Ant learning how to do all that he can now take the mask off and be as nonchalant as ever, but still get his character over.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it, anyway.
That's a great, great
observation.
He's amazing. The lack of quotes effort that he puts into his promos or his demeanor, and yet he's one of the major, brightest things going on in AEW at the moment. It's just outstanding.
I feel in some ways that there could be, in some ways, a link between the character of Orange Cassidy and that kind of underhanded babyface character that Eddie Guerrero had in his later years in WWE. Because I remember the debate between him and Jericho. I think that they should have insinuated that question about the environment, where Orange Cassidy opened up and gave a really robust and articulate answer, was something that he slipped in himself, just as that one thing to make him look good and get one over on Jericho. Because that seems kind of like that time Eddie, I think he swapped his number in the Royal Rumble with Ric Flair, or yeah. Like other times he had done stuff that gave him an upper hand, but he did so in kind of an underhanded way. But instead of Orange Cassidy doing it because he's trying to lie, cheat, and steal his way to the top, he just does it because he's lazy.
Yeah.
And
that's a great way to look at it.
It's easier to give yourself a little something going in than to have to fight for it the whole.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. Very good. Like it.
We missed you, Eddie. We miss you.
We do.
And your inspiration. We should make probably note of that. Pete stated that, I'm not sure if it was off recording, but maybe on. Eddie was one of his favorites when his passing happened.
Yep.
So it's not a coincidence that you can see that comparison because it's a reflection of the fandom in you.
Yeah, I think that was in the episode that got eaten by the.
Oh yeah, so the lost episodes. We should have the lost episodes as an episode. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not.
I think I've still got the lost episode somewhere. I'm not sure. I might have to go look for it. If we get enough requests, we'll
Pro Wrestling Post Podcast Underground.
Oh God! No.
I was thinking Pro Wrestling Post Podcast at night.
After dark, yeah. Oh my
After
word.
dark, indeed.
We were talking about Brody Lee earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where does he go from this? I think that he is going to insinuate himself into the AEW number one contendership tournament.
I think you're bang on there. He's had the mid-level gold, and if he's going to keep the Dark Order in check, he's going to need to be seen and very proactively heading up, and the only way up is obviously for the title. And what better way than forcing himself into that tournament? I think you've hit the nail on the head there, I think.
And I've also segued us into talking about the AEW #1 contendership tournament.
Oh man,
Look at this.
I'm impressed. I've got such a smile on my face. So this tournament that was announced last week, there's been another 3 names announced last night. Do you want to do the honors, Pete?
We haven't even mentioned the first 3 names.
Haven't we?
No, I think
No, we didn't.
Yeah,
we were
didn't.
going to talk about. We didn't.
We
didn't
were
get
meant to
around
talk
that.
about AEW last week, folks, but it got dropped due to time constraints. So we'll catch you up right now. Pete, go.
Last week they announced Jungle Boy, Ray Phoenix, and Kenny Omega. This week they announced Colt Cabana, Wardlow, and Hangman Adam Page. Anyone with some thoughts off the top of their head?
Kenny Omega, obviously, and Adam Page is where your eyes are drawn straight away after their. Well, it wasn't even really unceremonious split. It was just Kenny walking away. It's not really been spoken about since. They are going to have to face each other at some point during this tournament, possibly in the first round.
I would think finals.
Yeah, I imagine that being a finals thing.
That's if Brody Lee doesn't get in. Because then, as I said, Brody Lee's got to look strong, so he's got to get at least to the final to carry on looking strong. I would have them meet now, and then Kenny would do some kind of, not shenanigans, but he'll be completely nasty and grab the win that way and send Hangman back to the bar, drinking some more whiskey.
I'm in agreement. Very vis-a-vis Kenny versus Hangman, just because I think Kenny does better as a heel, just because he does that thing where he behaves like every bully from a movie in the 80s. And it's just perfect. He's got the face for it. He's got the attitude for it. Really, it's better than a kind of bland, I like video games thing that he's had going on as a babyface. We've seen
surprising. That. It is surprising that when AEW launched, he was that character. He was apparently himself. Whereas he wasn't the cleaner or the best belt machine. He was just Kenny. And it didn't feel right because, as you said, when he is the heel and he is playing like that jock kind of heel, he is so damn good. And to see him heading down that route fills me with joy.
Yeah, especially when the Young Bucks are acting the way.
We haven't even mentioned the Young Bucks, and are they turning, or is it them just being obnoxious punks?
I think those are the same. That's the same concept. I think they're turning, and they're turning into obnoxious punks, and it's because they have the money to pay off all of the fines that Tony Khan levels at them. I
love that. By the way, they're just super kicking people and just dropping some notes saying, "Yeah, fair enough. There's my fine money." I love that.
Because it just reminds me of all the times we've seen sports figures get into trouble and just pay off these fines like they're nothing.
Yeah.
Back to the tournament.
Yeah.
Do we have some predictions for first round matches other than Kenny versus Hangman?
I can see looking at.
Actually, better question: who else do we think is going to be in the tourney?
Well, I think the discussion was about Brody Lee, and so if Brody Lee is going to be added, a Brody Lee Colt Cabana altercation is just as well to happen too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing about tournaments is that you can build so many storylines out of it.
Yeah.
Does Luchasaurus join the ranks? Do you have division amongst Jurassic Express? Another big man that can move?
I've got a sneaking suspicion that you will have Wardlow and Jungle Boy paired up in a match. And then Wardlow's going to not decimate, but he's going to do some harm to Jungle Boy, which will then bring in Luchasaurus, and it'll be big guy against big guy somewhere down the line. Because Wardlow hasn't done anything. He's had one match, as far as I can think of. He's had one match, that cage match with Cody.
I think he's had a couple more matches on Dark, and at the very least, he's had a handful of squashes on Dynamite.
Yeah, but yeah, he's just been dragging MJF's coattails. Could MJF enter the tournament as well? I mean, he's looking for another way in, or is he too busy trying to get into the inner circle?
Maybe he'll use that as leverage to get into the end.
At Sammy's expense. So
this week was funny to see the birthday gift and
yes, it was the anniversary gift. Yeah. So we should talk a little bit about Chris Jericho's 30th anniversary selling.
I think we should. I mean, he is one of the goats of the industry, and yeah, I haven't seen it yet. So hearing this was going to be news to me. But yeah, let's go.
So yeah, he gave a speech about his 30 years in the industry. Then MJF came out to pay his respects to Jericho, and gave him a present, a great big portrait of MJF himself.
Had to be, didn't it?
I had an aunt that did that once for my grandparents. I'm not even joking. Her Christmas gift was a picture of herself. So my grandmother looks at it and said, "Is the gift behind the frame?"
Burn.
I can't even make that up, man. That's just funny.
So yeah, the gift was a big framed picture of MJF, which Jericho promptly smashed over the head of the guy who was holding it, proclaiming that he doesn't like portraits or clowns. And yeah, they had their little standoff before backing off, claiming, "Yeah, you're all right." And then my favorite part of the episode, or at least like my favorite gag they've ever done on Dynamite, was play a sound-alike of the Saturday Night Live end theme and roll credits, but all the credits were Chris Jericho.
Jericho.
I've seen that GIF. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter today. That looks good.
So was the comment about not liking clowns or portraits a jab to when he dressed like Doink, and when he did the gift of a portrait of himself to Kevin Owens? Is that like
yes, because he's
a direct jab?
Because he's already done. I think it was around this time last year. No, actually, it would have been closer to December. He came out with on Dynamite with a list of the people that he didn't want to wrestle anymore in 2019. And people were chanting "List of Jericho," and he told them to shut up because it's 2019 and he doesn't do that anymore.
Did it sound like lazy booking or something? Yeah.
And no, it wasn't like you just made the list again. It was just a list for that moment, and he called them out as like, "No, don't. That's not what we're doing here." Though I liked that segment was kind of a hybrid of the list of Jericho and the list of 1,004 holds, considering he kept naming Moxley. Anyway.
I'll be looking forward. I'll be watching that this. It'll be tomorrow by the time I get around to watching it, as I'm about 2 days behind everyone else at the moment. But yeah, I'm going to watch that with bated breath and can't wait to see this celebration at the end. Anything else in the world of AEW?
We kind of glossed over ideas for the first round matches.
We did. We sort of cut off to Jericho there. First round matches. Before we started recording, folks, Pete in the super secret Discord chat shared an image of Hangman Page's statement about joining the Contenders, and in it he talks about Colt Cabana and how he doesn't like him. If you can, go to Page's Twitter and just read the statement. It is proper hilarious. Could we see Colt Cabana with some Dark Order help against, I don't know, probably like Ray Phoenix, start a Lucha Bros or Lunch Bros, if you read the statement, against Dark Order down the line?
I still think that the Lucha Bros are tied up in their own heel storyline. What with them joining forces with Eddie Kingston and the Butcher and the Blade. So for them to turn around and play babyface to the Dark Order seems kind of like a step backwards.
Yeah, be too much of an about turn, really, wasn't it?
But if you were gonna say like Colt Cabana versus Jungle Boy, or even Colt Cabana versus Wardlow, I think that the time for Colt Cabana to be holding main event titles has kind of come and gone, and he might just be there to put someone over convincingly.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely got that kind of feel, that vibe that Colt's just there to, unfortunately, make someone look good going into the next round. What about you, Mark? You got any ideas?
I like those suggestions. I'm almost kind of wondering, with some of the teams that they split up, like why not a Pentagon? Why is he not part of this? Is there an injury that they've talked about, or is it just because
I think they don't want to have. I don't think they don't want to have tag teams, like an active tag team fighting each other in this tournament.
Yeah, we can see that. Well, I mean, Pentagon Jr., I guess I look at the Lucha Underground and where he was there and how he was so prominent and how he held the title and how that character was so built up. Why aren't we getting that opportunity to see that transition here? And how you pull in a really strong, dominant Latin character that has that dark edge to it, that has all of those things, also contending. No knock against Rey Fenix, but at the same time, I think aesthetically, you can get what Rey Fenix looks like and put that in the cosmetic or aesthetic look of Pentagon, because all those skills and the catchphrase and all of that is all tied into it, right? So it's marketable.
But I think ultimately, like at this point, I'm surprised that the Lucha Brothers have really had their one shot at the championship.
Yeah,
and
it was a standout match.
Yeah, very. Like it was the tournament finals, wasn't it? For the initial yeah. As far as my picks for first round, it's probably gonna be a whole bunch of big guys.
Yeah,
you're gonna have maybe Kenny versus Ray, maybe Hangman versus Jungle Boy. Actually, no, it's probably gonna be Wardlow versus Jungle Boy. I think that's a way you can start into a Wardlow versus Luchasaurus.
See, where Mark, you had said, Brody Lee has to make it to the finals for it to be taken seriously. I think him not winning puts his leadership in doubt of the Dark Order, and people start to second guess and question him.
Is it too early to sow those seeds?
Well, we look at it this way, right? He lost a title after defending it a couple of times. Now he's in a tournament. He loses the tournament. Do you plant seeds towards something that happens next year, or is it taught? Is it laid and you work your way there? Maybe it is. Maybe it is too early to do that. Maybe conceptually the idea is something they're floating.
The only reason I say that is because I don't see anyone else in the Dark Order strong enough, as in character-wise, to stand up to him just yet. I could see where you're going with it, and if we're going down the long-term booking, that would be the start of it. But at the moment, Evil Uno, Grayson are not strong enough characters to stand up against Brody Lee at the moment, unless they start recruiting again and bring in a Hangman Page that was hinted at, things like that.
So is Colt standing up to Wardlow not an option? Does that not have legs?
The way I see Colt Cabana's role in the Dark Order is that he is Brody Lee's pet.
Yeah, he's the big name that they're gonna treat nicely and show all this respect to get all of the younger guys who are struggling into their ranks.
Yeah,
because
that's the way. Yeah, he's getting away with so much, and because he's his little pet project.
That makes sense.
So that brings to a closeout AEW section. We're nearly heading to the go home, but before we do, let's go back to Mark. We've got a couple of future pieces coming up, and staying on the AEW theme, we've got a roster profile from one of their newest roster members.
Yes, the best man, Kip Sabian's best man, Miro, formerly the Bulgarian brute Rusev. Don't call him Alexander. He is now part of AEW. Jake Landmesser will have this week's profile on his career, where he's been, how he's come to be, and now the opportunity with him now in AEW. Different look, slender, but excited about what the possibilities will be for Miro moving forward.
Did you see him and Kip Sabian in the crowd for Dynamite?
No, I missed that.
They had a Street Fighter machine. They were playing Street Fighter while the wrestling show was going on.
Were they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, all right. I'll keep my eyes peeled for that tomorrow. Oh, that's awesome. That's cheered me
Go
right
back
up.
and watch that. So, kind of wondering how is his introduction going to be similar to how John Morrison was, where he's brought in as part of a tag team. Will Miro eventually branch off? Will he be just a tag team? What's the role for him going to be like? So
He's too big of a name to be. And I love Kip Sabian because he's a good dude. I kind of know him, and he's a fellow Brit. But Miro is a bigger name. I can't see him being saddled with Kip for too long.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be some big reveal at Kip and Penelope Ford's wedding.
Yeah, he becomes the worst man. Maybe he's cheating on. He sowed his lots of oats or something. He's had a wedding ruined for him. He's gonna ruin somebody else's. I don't know.
Oh man, but yeah, the piece from Jake, I've quickly scanned. I haven't really read much of it, but I had a quick peek, and it goes into detail about his childhood back in Bulgaria and how he got himself over to the States. Very eye opening. I can't wait for you lot out there to read it. It's got lots of stuff there about Rusev that you may not know about. I certainly didn't. So that's something definitely to look forward to. That'll be out sometime in the coming week. And we've got one more for another fellow Brit, I think.
Yes. When we initially came up with the concept of unsung heroes, we looked at people that fall under the radar, are really good, but do they ever get the attention to be heralded as much as they should be? And one of the people that I had thought of months and months and months ago was Gentleman Chris Adams, the late Gentleman Chris Adams, who many will credit with being the originator of the super kick, which in some regards people despise the move because now it's used so often. But when it was first was originated, or when it came about, he's often credited with it. And that's when looking at his martial arts background ties into that. He's often credited with training and developing so many young stars. So how he's offering feedback and how he's helping to make others better was always something that he was tied to. And the late Gentleman Chris Adams is our next unsung hero, from everything to his time with Gino Hernandez, to his work in WCW, to work in the 80s and 90s. He was often considered a teacher, and this talks about his career and all of its attributes and successes. So
I'm excited to read that because I first learned about Chris Adams when I read Stone Cold Steve Austin's autobiography. Mm-hmm. And basically every time I've heard about him since, I've learned something new.
Yeah.
I remember watching Chris Adams on World of Sport over here. My nan, who I used to watch World of Sport with, she used to talk about him. And it wasn't until Chris's brother, Neil, he won a gold medal for judo at the Olympics. I want to say it was the 88 Olympics.
Yeah.
And he became like a major face over here for a year or two. And he always used to pop up on children's TV shows. And I remember one time he used to talk about his brother, Chris. And I spoke to my nan, and she was like, yeah. He was like the wrestler. He's now gone to America. For love nor money, I couldn't find out where the hell Chris Adams was. And it wasn't until he popped up in WCW that I've got hold of my nan again, and I was like, is this the same Chris Adams? Yeah, that's the one. And she was like, oh no, I don't like him now. It's too Americanized, because obviously it's sports entertainment and not lost his World of Sport ways. But I remember watching him in WCW and thinking, wow, this guy was over here. This guy is a Brit. He's now flown over there and he's made it big. Anyone could do it from over here. So he's the one that opened my eyes to, it be done.
The one feud that he was part of that I think a lot of fans, I guess in the mid-Atlantic, early NWA tied years would be when him and the late Gino Hernandez were together as the dynamic duo, and they would feud with the Von Erichs. And part of it was they had this hair match where him and Gino were shaved bald. And these guys that had these long flowing locks, back then it was their hair was everything. It was part of the sports car, it was part of the look, it was part of everything. So I mean, today it might be thought of as like, okay, you lose your hair. Like, I shave my hair every day. It's not a big deal. But back then it was, you just didn't do it. You just didn't touch. It was part of my character. It's who I am. And to have that happen. So if anyone ever gets a chance, look up the feud with the dynamic duo and the Von Erichs, and you will see so much when it comes to back and forth. There was a Dark Side of the Ring episode on Gino Hernandez, and Chris Adams is brought up in that as well, and you'll hear a little bit about the rivalry that happened and that storyline too. So if you get a chance, season 1 of Dark Side of the Ring does mention Chris Adams and does talk about him a little bit, and so you'll see that. So
yes,
that
folks.
should be coming out this week.
Yep, sometime this week. Keep your eyes peeled. Obviously, check our socials, which we'll plug in a moment. But that will be up on the site sometime this week. And that is that, folks. Just a smaller episode this week because we've realised that we've been going over our allotted times, basically. So before we go, let's do our usual goodbyes. Pete, give us your socials.
Read my feature. Brace for Impact every Monday on the Pro Wrestling Post website. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Probably, and you can find me in a chamber under Al Kazna at Petra and Jordan, along with a bunch of other Pete Moons and a really old knight who urges you to choose wisely.
I am just as confused as you guys are, so...
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
See, I was going to say that, and I thought, that's not right. It's the old guy in the when he's choosing the Grail. Yeah, see, oh man, I should have kept my mouth shut. Okay, Mark, where are you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at the Marc Madison. That is my personal Twitter handle, or you can find our site Twitter handle at Pro Wrestling PST, or on Instagram at Pro Wrestling Post. You can find us there, and unlike the 80s Cobra Kai heel, of which Kenny Omega is, I will graciously be your Daniel LaRusso. So there you go.
So as we're on the 80s vibe, I'm going to steal Pete's finish there and say just before or just after I finish up here, I'm going to go and watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You can find me. It's a great movie. I went to the cinema to see that. That's how old I am.
Oh, no.
You can find me on Twitter at Mark Blake PWP, and you can find the pod's Twitter itself at PWP_pod, where more things will be retweeted and silly gifs and other wrestling related jollities. So until next week, we shall speak to you again. From me, Mark, adios.
Ciao.
Hoil Fire.